So today we have Margaret Emory, and she is an agent in New York and has written an amazing book called Ask an Agent, which was based on her columns that she wrote for Backstage. And she found that a lot of actors started asking her all kinds of questions and for feedback and advice and tips. And so I've gotten partway through the book, and I have to say, first off, to anybody who's watching this, you should definitely get a copy of this book. It's like a steal for, the $15 or whatever it is on Amazon. You're going to learn things that take people years and years of, mistakes. So, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's certainly a pleasure, and I applaud what you're doing, and I'm certainly glad to be part of it. Is the sound okay?
Yeah, yeah, it's
Okay,
totally
it's a little
fine.
echoey here,
Oh,
so
okay. Well,
I can just keep talking though. I
yeah.
won't.
If you feel like there's any echo, you can like maybe lower your volume down on the computer.
Ah,
Uh,
that should be really good then. That's much better.
yeah, maybe.
Thank
Okay,
you.
okay.
Thank you. Yeah, a little background about myself. I'm a native New Yorker, so I grew up here in the city, and I always wanted to be an actress. I guess I went to some Broadway shows when I was younger, and I got bitten with the bug, and but I chose to go to Princeton, and I went to Princeton, and then after that, I went to the neighborhood playhouse, and I studied to be an actress, and I had a brief but brilliant career where I did a lot of theater and some work on the soap operas. And I worked very hard to try to get an agent, but it was very difficult. It was just as competitive back then as it is now. And I was the kind of actress that I created a lot of companies where I gave myself work and I also gave other actors work. We had a political satire group that did shows in lots of clubs and cabarets, and then I was in a Shakespeare company, and I led Shakespeare workshops up and down the East Coast. And eventually, one thing led to another, and a mentor of mine suggested that I become an agent. And I really didn't know what an agent did. I had always wanted to have one, but I never had one. So I didn't know what an agent did. And this was way before the computer and way before the internet. So there was no way to Google what is an agent. So one thing led to another. And if the people want to read about how I actually became an agent and that process, they can read my book, Ask an Agent. But I ended up on the other side in management as an assistant in an agency. And to be honest, Martin, once I was on the other side, I thought it was so fascinating. I
Mhm.
mean, I was privy to all of this information that I had no idea about as an actress. I mean, it was eye-opening. And I thought with all of this information, I really enjoyed it. I mean, I really enjoyed being in a position where I could actually be effective. I could help actors. I could go out and find the actors that I thought were very talented and then help them get auditions and then get jobs. And that's what's called building a career. And it was really wonderful. And I thought all of this information, actors should have it. Knowledge is power. So that's when I pitched the idea of creating the column in the Backstage to the editor at the time, and she thought it was a good idea, and it was like a Dear Abby, Dear Margaret, my question of the week, and I answered it, and people thought that the information, they found it so helpful. And after I think I wrote the column for like 3 years, people said, gee, you should really put this in a book. And I wrote a book proposal, and I created a book for Backstage Books, and that was in 2001, and it had a really nice run for around 15 years, and then they stopped publishing it. And so then a couple of years ago, I thought the information was still very valuable, and people could really continue to learn. I mean, what we do as agents is really not that much different now than it was, 20 years ago. It's just that the way we do it is different. So I figured maybe I should write a second edition. And I did. I updated it. I wrote a second edition, and I took out all of the language that had to do with faxing, because nobody faxes anymore. And I wrote a lot more about the electronic age and how everything is really electronified, and we make submissions through the internet. And I don't think I put together any hard copy submissions anymore. I mean, actors still have to have hard copy of their photo and resume when they go to an audition, but so I wrote the second edition, and I self-published, and it came out in 2015, I guess. And I still think it's very, very good information. It's a good guideline. But I've been an agent for 20 plus years, and I enjoy it. I really, I enjoy it. It's a very good combination of being creative. I mean, we work as a casting director in a way, because we're always making submissions and submitting our actors for different projects. So we have to decide when the breakdown comes out, which actors are good for what roles. That's very creative, and we're always challenging ourselves to think out of the box and to expand the opportunities. The more opportunities, which really equals auditions, that we can get for our actors, the better chance they stand to get work. I mean, it's a business, and we don't get paid. Agents don't get paid until the actors actually book work, and then we receive compensation through commission. So it's in our best interest to really, get them as many auditions as possible. And that's what I do most of the day. I'm making submissions, getting auditions, getting the information out to the actors I represent. And along the way, we're also advising, we're negotiating deals, we're helping our actors decide between two offers that they get. It's very interesting. And the agency that I work at is very small. We have about 70 signed clients and 20 or 30 freelancers. So that's like beyond boutique. And we like it because it really enables us to create a relationship with the artists that we represent. I mean, that's the fun of it. You're really working very closely with your actors and helping them build a career, and it's very gratifying. It's very competitive. It's got its ups and downs, and very difficult. But the rewards are huge, and I really enjoy it. I enjoy what I do.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, I love the story, and especially how you talk about how when you first agent, it's so eye-opening for you. I mean, for me, it's funny because sometimes people ask and they're like, well, why are you doing this if you're not an actor? Because I'm more filmmaker and photographer, and I love marketing stuff and growing my own business. So that's why I'm doing this. But for me, especially, I mean, sitting on the other side of the desk, essentially, when I'm doing a casting for a film or something, it's such a different experience than what an actor sees. And I've heard it time and time again that actors should try casting for their own film.
They definitely. I tell people, you should work in a casting office, or you should intern with an agency. I mean, that's part of why the book was written, so that the people would have an education about how these different parts in the industry work together. And if you were an actor and you were inside a casting session, or even as a reader, I tell people to work as a reader. You can really learn so much by seeing what other people do, the do's and don'ts, what makes for a good audition, how the casting people are reacting, what kind of attitude do they appreciate when the actor comes in the room. These are really important, because it's, yes, being talented and doing your work and preparing for an audition is extremely important. And that's a given, right? That should be
that's the baseline.
That's like a no-brainer. That's a basic. But then along with that comes, what's your attitude? What are you putting forth? What kind of energy do you bring in with you? Uh, do you put yourself out there as someone who they might want to work with, or are you a complainer and they can see that? It's,
Hmm.
people like to like the people they work with, and they like to have people at low maintenance. And it's the same thing with agents. I mean, we love the talent, but if it's going to be a problem to work with, then we'll like love it less.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, recommending that actors intern or assist in whatever way they can with those processes, whether it's casting or agencies. I mean, getting that experience is so important. It's also good because not only do they gain all the extra knowledge, and a lot of that knowledge can be gained in this book, they're
Mhm.
also actually able to like ask questions when there's time for that, which is helpful because like, you can't ask a book a question.
Right,
But
right.
also you get to meet people and you get to network and have those contacts now for the future.
It's really important. It's really important. I mean, you need to have the tools, the marketing tools as an actor. Say you need to have your a really great headshot, and your resume needs to be clear and up to date with very good with the information that's helpful. And then, these days, if you want to do TV and film, you really need to develop a reel and have a reel that your agent can use to with the submissions. And then you have to have your material. I mean, you need to have your process of how to prepare for an audition. And that's very, preparing for a theater audition is different than preparing for a musical theater audition, which is different from preparing for a TV audition, which is different from preparing for a film audition. So, I mean, these days, if I have a musical theater actor who's trained for musical theater, and that's what the basis of this actor's resume has on it, but they come into the office and they say, we really want to do TV film. We're not adverse to submitting them for TV and film. I mean, it's in the agency's best interest, since we're so small, to be able to submit our roster across the board. However, we insist that they take on-camera classes. They have to learn the technique, because there's a difference between musical theater and on camera. So they have to learn the technique of working on camera, and they also have to learn how to audition
Yeah.
camera. I mean, they have to take like two different types of classes, so that when they get their chance to go in for Suzanne Ryan or Jonathan Strauss, uh, for SVU, they do the best for themselves, and they represent the agency well.
Hmm.
So,
Representing the agency well is really important. And, through reading your book, I'm learning about that whole side of it. Like actors, they're always like, why is it so hard to get an agent? And it's really like it comes down to the fact that agents have a lot on the line when they take on a client, like your reputation, your relationship with casting directors. Even like it takes a lot of work to help a client get out there, and you don't want to bring someone on who's either like slightly, gets like lots of nerves when they're auditioning, so they mess up, or if they don't have a lot of, you say in your book, you need a lot of good credits to your name to have a higher chance of getting an agent.
sure. I mean, we do have some developmental clients, which is basically the actors that have just graduated from the conservatories, or that have very modest resumes because they're just beginning. So we'll take on a few per
Oh,
year,
yeah.
but we can't take on a lot, because it could be a year before they actually book a job, and we have to pay the electric bills. So I think actors, they don't really understand the fact that we do a lot of work for free, basically. When we are working with actors, we're making these submissions, we're pushing them, we're trying to get them auditions. They have callbacks, we're dealing with the callbacks. They might not book the job, and that's all that work that we've done, but there's no money.
Hmm.
It's not like we're paid an hourly wage.
Yes, that's the
So
challenge.
so that's a curious thing, right? And we have to be um, We have to think about our investment, so we make our selections according to, number one, who we think is really talented, and that of course is very subjective. I mean, I'm one agent, but I'm agent A, and agent B over there could have a totally different view and a different opinion of what they think is talented. And then we have to think of, like, what's out there. Can we get this person auditions? Are they marketable? Are there parts out there for this talented person? I mean, not everybody, it's not everybody's time. Sometimes it's definitely, there are things out there for that person, and other times, maybe they should go and work in theater in Philadelphia and come back in 5 years when they're more their type,
Mhm.
that kind of thing. And then, we make a commitment and we have to work very hard, and we hope that the actor that we take on, just like any actor that we work with, is really, they're really up for the challenge. You know, they have to be very resilient, dedicated, passionate, all those things, and they can't fall apart with each rejection.
Mhm.
There's 99% rejection. I mean, I would love to be able to paint a more positive picture, but it's very competitive, and this is New York. This is the pinnacle. So I mean, if you want to try to make it here, it's you have to be up for the challenge
Yeah.
and very, very resilient.
So, I mean, that's good, and that's part of the first question, which is, telling us a little bit about your clients and the types of actors that you most enjoy working with. But a lot of actors, they kind of have it in their head like, oh, my goal is once I get an agent, then I'll be set, and I'm gonna get lots of work and get lots of auditions and all that. I mean, if you don't mind talking a little bit about some of the like processes that you go through, but also like what do the actors need to be aware of when they do get an agent? Because it's not like they're just going to suddenly sit back and the agent is going to do all that.
No, I mean, we're not God and we're not your fairy godmother. We don't have a magic wand which we can just wave around and create a career for you. Uh, we 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 would be able to submit the people for projects and have a conversation with casting directors. So we're going to be building their exposure. But the actors, every actor needs to be out there for themselves, networking. We tell all the actors to go out there and, uh, in whatever way you can, become familiar with the casting directors, whether it's, the pay to play sessions, or offering to be a reader, or going to, like, for the musical theater people, going to the ECCs. I mean, that's one part. It helps us so much because we're submitting and we're making our pushes. But if the casting director has just met one of our actors at a seminar and was blown away, then when they receive the email, they're like, oh my God, I just met them. Of course, let me have them come in. It's really, I hate to say it, but it's really very much of a part of the industry these days. And then they, I think, this is New York, so I'm speaking to the actors here primarily in New York, but this is a theater town. And there's all sorts of projects that you can get involved with so that you really stay focused and stay in the network and of what people are doing. And if theater isn't your bag, and if you want to do TV and film, then get involved in a web series or do student films, or make sure you stay in class so that you're always working on your technique. I mean, it's like the actor is the CEO, and this is what they have to offer, and they have to always, always, always uh, be studying, keeping it in fine shape. It's like an athlete. You have to be ready because you never know when that opportunity will come. You'll never know when there's a role that they are going to screen test for, and they have to be on their game.
Hmm.
And so I think it's really, really important to realize that we're a team. The agent and the actor, we work together as a team. So we do what we do, and the actor does what they do, and together we're working on this product, which is this career, right? So I would say to people to stay active and to always work on what they have to offer. And if there's a weak link, to firm that up. If they have problem with cold readings, then they need to take a class to deal with cold readings.
Yeah.
If they have a problem with memorization, then they need to learn how to memorize. If they don't know how to make good self tapes, there's so much, there's gazillion YouTubes out there on how to make a good self tape.
Yeah, that's true.
So
Your general suggestion is that actors, especially like for submissions or whatever, you're submitting based on people's strengths, but wherever their weaknesses are, they want to kind of fill those holes so that they don't have too many weaknesses, but then they have a couple of key strengths that are used for their marketing.
absolutely, absolutely, because it's a developmental thing. I mean, we can sign you now, but a year from now, you've developed into. That's why people get uh, updated headshots. The way you look now, you might look different. You'll look older, or whatever, or more mature, or maybe a different hair color. But you're always improving your brand, right? And of course, you lead by your strengths. I mean, if especially at the beginning, we're always going to be trying to open doors based on how the client can beat the competition.
Mhm.
So if they're like an incredible triple threat, we're going to be submitting them for, Ensemble on Broadway to understudy one of the leads.
Yeah.
I mean, the goal is to get people working. People have to work. They can't just go to class and be in class all their lives. They have to get experience. They have to. And they have to get experience. And through the experience, they meet the people, they build their network, they feel, they have higher self esteem, even if it's a non paying job or a job that pays very little. They still, it's experience and it's a credit, and it's called building your resume. And it's very important. It's very important because down the road, people look at the resume and they see, what the person has been out of college for a year, and what have they done? Nothing. Well, they really, they need to get some experience. They're a little too green,
Yeah.
you know.
You mentioned a little bit about brand just before, and I wanted to ask, in reading your book, it definitely sounds like agents in general want actors who are very versatile, but there's also the important thing of figuring out your brand or your type and how you specifically market yourself. So if you don't mind, could you explain kind of this distinction between like how much should an actor focus on being able to play a really particular type versus like how can they make sure that they're also versatile enough that an agent will want to work with them?
Well, I mean, there are different types of actors. There are character actors who can play many, many different types of roles, and then there are actors who they have a specialty. They're incredible physical comedians, or they're you know Shakespeare is their thing.
Yeah.
So, the branding, this word branding, it's like, slick advertising talk. And really what it comes down to is, where can you beat the competition? What are your strengths? Like we were talking before. And I think sometimes for younger actors, yes, you need to lead with your strengths, but you shouldn't try to be too specific because you're still developing. You're still developing, and the agent, we're not that interested in brand, but what we want to know is what we want to be clear with the actors is, do you know where you're going to book your work? And if someone comes to me and they've just graduated from a conservatory and they say, well, what do you see in your first year? Well, I see myself on Broadway. That's really unrealistic. I'm not saying it hasn't happened. I've had clients that booked a job, right out of school, and it was on Broadway. So I'm not going to say that that's impossible, but most of the time, what they're going to say is, well, I'd really like to, if they're a theater person, try to get work in regional theater and build my credits and get experience and have it be on the way to being on Broadway or off Broadway in one of the playwrights' horizons or theaters. I mean, you need to know, if you want to do TV and film, then you need to know what shows are shooting in New York. And don't say, well, I really, Games of Thrones is my most favorite show and I really want to be on Games of Thrones. And it's like, but it doesn't shoot here.
Yeah.
And unless, you could be Peter Dinklage's, dwarf sister, little person sister, then I can't, I don't know how I'm going to do that. But, so I think agents, they're really, they want actors to be clear about where they fit in the industry and have a realistic perspective on the big picture. And not come in. I mean, that's what part of the interview is all about. If we want to meet someone that we're interested in working with, and then we're discussing, so where do you see yourself in the industry? What's your 5-year plan? What's your 10-year plan? Where are your passions? And if they tell us, if they mention things that are absolutely ridiculous, then we're not going to be the match for them.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I mean, that was literally going to be my next question. I was going to ask specifically about that. You talk about that. That's why I love this book. It literally talks about all these things that, you're coming to an agent meeting and they're like, well, what are your goals? And you say something that sounds ridiculous. I mean, it's great to have like ideal visions and everything for you, but you also have to understand that, people will see you in certain ways, especially agents who work with so many actors. And if you seem to be saying things that don't make sense or that are like, a shot in the dark, and they're going to be like, well, this person might not take all of our regular submissions seriously because they're only focused on this one big goal, and that can kind of hurt your chances, right?
There's like a fine line between having ambition and being entitled. Right? So we like ambition. We like someone who is, ready to go. They're very eager. They're enthusiastic, but we want someone who will take guidance and who will understand that Rome wasn't built in a day.
Yeah.
And I think actors have to understand that the agent wants to do the best for them. I mean, we really want things to happen where it's not like we're sitting here saying, oh, that's impossible. Oh, that's not going to happen. No, but we just know that most of the time it takes longer. It takes longer. And it's actually better if things happen in a progression and not so suddenly, because everyone needs to work into it. They need to arrive. And if they're just plopped down, it can really turn you around and create more problems.
That's true. There's a quote, I forget who it's by, something along the lines of like, a lot of people overestimate what they can do within a year, but they underestimate what they could do within a decade.
Right. No one's really looking at the long picture. They want it now. They want it now. I understand that. That's kind of like, a youthful energy, but that's, it's all part of how we work with people. We have to be the sane voice, and sometimes that's good cop, bad cop.
What would you say? Like, let's say a couple of key clients that you have right now. Is there any sort of like general, like one or two goals that some of your clients currently have, and what are some specific steps that you're either taking or recommending that the actor take for themselves to move towards those goals?
Sure. Well, I would say, like, for my musical theater people, their goal, of course, is to be on Broadway.
Hmm.
So they need to make their migration. They need to book work so that they build a resume, and they need to go to class, and they need to get in front of the casting directors, and they need to be around to take part in the developmental workshops. But basically, what it is I think the the building the resume and the experience
Yeah.
leads to jobs,
Mm.
because the community is so small that they talk amongst themselves. So if I have someone who auditions and auditions well and is very close to getting a job, probably the director is going to talk to the director of their last job. Because when it comes to Broadway, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money, and they want to make sure that they're hiring people who are responsible, and not only talented, but can really show up and do the job. So
Mhm.
I would say it's definitely building to that opportunity. And for the TV and film people, everybody wants to do it, wants to be a series regular, but you have to, like, do co-stars and get uh, get your experience too, there. And so I say, make sure your marketing tools are good. We get very involved with the photos. If 6 months comes and goes, and we've been making submissions and there have been very few auditions, then one of the areas that we're definitely going to be looking at is photos.
Mhm.
Maybe they need to have an update, better photo, different photo, maybe. uh, that's one area. And then, do they have a reel? You know, Maybe we need to have some more tape that we can submit, include with our submissions. And then they have to get out and meet the casting directors, or get involved with little projects that will get them out there. Do a web series, promote yourself. It's all, I can sell someone if I have something to sell. So I can write an email, or call a casting director and say, I feel really strongly that you should see so and so for this role. And then, of course, they're going to say why, and I'm going to, well, they just did a short film. They played a character that was very similar, and I think they really are very compelling, and they've worked for the last year, and they're that much more confident. I really think you should give them a try. So we make our pushes, but we have to justify our pushes. So the actor needs to be doing something so that we can use that to justify. It's not like, hey, you really need to see this person. They're so good. That's not good enough for an effective push. And
Yeah.
the casting directors, they're very, very organized. This was like one casting director a long time ago. I remember, I don't know if it was in a panel or if I heard it through an agent friend, but the my friend who was an agent, was talking to the casting director and saying, well, we're always pushing our people to you, and we we have a yes behind what we're doing, because we think you should be seeing their people. And the casting director said yes, and our job is to say no. So I mean, that's what we're up against.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
I wanted to just ask, because we're talking a lot about like how important it is to get credits to move up in your career. How does an actor who doesn't have an agent get decent credits? Do you have any suggestions if they don't have an agent yet?
Sure. I mean, the unions are very, very open to giving people opportunities. I mean, you have the EPAs and the ECCs, so that if you're a union member, and even if you're a non-union member, you can try to crash to get in front of the casting people. And so I've known of actors who have really gotten jobs that way. They get in front of the casting director. They happen to be very, very good or very right for that role. And the casting director, they don't mind bringing in an actor without agent representation if they feel that they're what the people are looking for. So that's a way. I mean, with film and TV, it's a little difficult because you need the submissions through the agent. I mean, I don't really know on Actors Access how many, if you were to submit yourself for one of the network shows, I don't think that the casting people are going to go looking at the submissions that they're getting from actors unless it's something very specific. I mean, if they're looking for someone that has a specific language skill, then they're probably going to open it up to the general population, along with what the submissions that they get through the agency, right?
Yeah.
But so, I think you need to get out there and get involved with play reading groups, volunteer your services at New York Theater Workshop or the new dramatists, so that you get into the flow and you're working and get involved with showcases of plays, and hopefully some of those people in that showcase have agents, and their agents will come and see the shows, and then you're going to be seen by an agent. My feeling is that not to downgrade the importance of an agent, but there's a lot of work that people can do on their own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of people
their resume so that they're ready for an agent.
Yeah,
not everybody's ready to have an agent. You have to prove to an agent that you could bring in some money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not a charity here. We're in business, so I'm looking for people that I feel I can sell, I can market, and that will book work.
Yeah. Good. The question that you made, that you also talk about in your book, about having a very specific skill set to be able to offer for those, those types of roles that we're just discussing online, when they're trying to find somebody who might not necessarily have an agent but does have a skill set. That's a great idea. But in general, I mean, your whole talk about an actor having to promote themselves and do all of these different things. Yes, an agent, like, you can get work without an agent, but when an agent is going to be more interested in taking you on, if they can already see that you're someone who's got the drive and the initiative and the, whatever you call it, where you keep on going in order to actually promote yourself. Because if you just kind of come in and you don't really seem to have things together, and you're not super, like, you're not scheduled properly, they my in as much as they'll need to be able to get those jobs, right?
Right. I mean, we're dealing with highly efficient professionals who are ready and able and willing. It sounds like John Doe Society, ready and able and willing to go out there, do their best, and book work. Mm-hmm. I mean, and so if you're finding that you're at the level where you're booking work and you're on a par with actors who have agents, then you're probably ready to have an agent. But if you're not, and you're, still kind of getting your feet wet and still learning about, the casting directors and the regional theaters and, the difference between an agent and a casting director, then you need to educate yourself more. Mm-hmm. Because my job is not to teach the people. They can read my book and they can learn about it that way. But, I'm not, and I have to laugh because all of these colleges and conservatories, they all say they have a business of acting class, which I assume they have, and that they'll be teaching people what an agent does, what a casting director. But then I work with some of these people that have just graduated and they haven't a clue. They don't really know what an agent does. So it's very frustrating.
On your own school or your own classes that you took, they kind of like didn't it they didn't allow you to actually go out and work in real things until the end of the school, or was it someone
Well,
that
like
you?
when I went to the neighborhood playhouse, they wouldn't allow us to go out and do showcases.
Yeah, and it kind of like very much limited.
They're very, very, you're in this 2-year program to study, to train. We don't want your focus to be, and I have to, I kind of understand what they say.
Yeah,
We don't want your focus to be split between getting work and having a career and studying the craft. So I
yeah,
sort of understand that. But then when it comes time to put together the little showcase that they're going to invite agents and casting directors to at the end of the second year, they really should teach the students what these agents and casting directors do and
yeah.
how they work with the actors, what a breakdown is and all that jazz.
Um, well, I'd like to ask a little bit about your advice on auditioning. Do you have like two or three top tips that you can give to an actor who maybe
Yes.
struggles to get called back, or even, they get called back, but then they just like never get the role?
Yes. I will look at my paper because I do have those. Okay. So, okay. So here's the thing. I really think that everybody should coach. You should always go to a coach and work on the material. And even if it's like a one-liner scene, okay, so you don't have to spend big bucks on the coach, but get together with a friend and go over the material so that you're not, you've heard it out loud, you've worked it out, it's in your body, you've made a choice. Don't go into the audition with like a couple of vague ideas.
Yeah.
They really want specific choices and they want you to be committed to the choice.
Yeah.
And
Even
if
if
you
the
do
choice
that,
is wrong, right? Even if the choice is wrong.
even if the choice is wrong, they'll be happy to see that you've done your work and that you've come up with some kind of real um, acting.
Yeah.
And then if you make an impression, you might not get that job. But if a couple of weeks later they call you in for another role, then we know you did a good job. You made an impression. So much of it, especially the first audition, you have to make an impression. So you have to make strong choices, be committed to those choices. Your entrance and your exit are really important. You need to learn how to enter the room and be pleasant and then thank them and exit pleasantly, and don't take a lot of their time and don't chit chat, you know, be pleasant, but professional, right?
Even if you're playing like, because some actors they get into like a very specific mood before they come in, and do you feel like that can kind of hurt their chances if they come in already in character and then struggle to kind of get out of character when they
Well,
leave?
I mean, if it's for a film and TV thing and it's a very intense character, I mean, usually the casting people are aware of that. So it's not going to be like, hey Bob, how you doing? It will be, we're this is so and so, and the person you just have to kind of fourth wall it and go through the motions of how do you do, how do you do, how do you do, and then go to your work.
Hmm.
But I that was one of the important things. Um, I okay, so if you audition and the casting director or the director gives you an adjustment, don't don't resist it. Take it,
Yeah.
do it, even if you think it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
You listen to it and then you apply it and you do the best that you can, because number one, even if they're jerks, they're trying to see if you can take direction.
Hmm.
So sometimes it might even just be a test for that. It might not be what they want you to do, but they want to see if you can, if they can play with you, if you're, so you have to be very flexible. So this business it's like all oxymoronic. I mean, there are like opposites that jut again. You have to come into the room and be pleasant, but you can't be too pleasant. You have to do your work. You have to come with strong ideas, but you also need to be flexible. So, and you have to really read the room. I mean, if it's a room where it's a big space and the sound gets lost in the space, then you have to adjust yourself. If it's a small space and you're going in for gypsy, you can't like blast them out of the room. So you have to, you have to be aware of your surroundings. And there are all sorts of audition uh, situations. So that's why I always say to people, audition for everything. Even if it's something you don't want to do, go in and audition for it.
It's a good suggestion.
Because you need to work that muscle.
Yeah.
And the more you do it, the easier, you'll be able to deal with all different types of things.
Yeah, it's also kind of like if you go in for something that you don't really care about getting that much and you're just doing it to practice auditioning, it also helps you be more comfortable with experimenting or trying things in front of people, which can kind of
Sure.
that muscle.
Sure, you're going to build that flexibility. And for the people that, they go and I have one gal who every audition she goes in for, she gets a call back and she hasn't booked anything. And she's very, very, she's like wondering what's going on. And I know she's doing a good job. Obviously, she's getting a call back. But honestly, the competition out there is it's really ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So I just have to encourage her, just keep at it, in a philosophical way. You have to say, the right thing hasn't just come along. Don't worry, just keep doing your good work.
I don't know whether you know Eric Michael Gillette.
Sure do.
You know him, yeah. I interviewed him a couple of weeks ago for this, and he actually was talking about a similar situation where a girl he was friends with kept on going out and auditioning, and she would get the call back and then wouldn't get taken in. And he said to her, it's possible that you're kind of seeing the same people and they've just started to come to know you as the person that they want to see for it, but they don't ever want to bring you in. So he was like, maybe try like for 6 months going and seeing completely new people and then come back. So she went and saw some other people and booked something. And then she came back and told the people that she was normally seeing that she had booked something. And then she started getting bookings again. And I was like, that's
sure.
a really idea.
It's curious because it's like, having a job or having booked something, it just raises your credibility. It just raises you to another level. That's why we always tell people to build their resume. When people see that you're getting jobs, you're booking, the experience, then you've like jumped to another level. And you could be the same person, but in their eyes, it's significant. So.
We talked a lot about things that actors should do when they're interested in getting an agent. In your book, you talk about something specific, or at least like one specific thing that's kind of standing out to me of what they should not do, which is, going and finding an agent's email directly and messaging them like their headshot and resume. And you're saying it's better to go through the, the normal like submissions email address. So besides that, though, are there any other things that actors definitely should not do when they're trying to get an agent or a manager?
Okay. Well, I think it's all in the approach. I think the best approach is to, obviously you want to get an agent. You want to find an agent that you're compatible with, that loves your talent. So you can't make someone love your talent. They either will or they won't. So there's hundreds of agents. And if and most time in my experience, I've only called in people that I'm interested in. So if I call someone in for an interview, it means that I'm interested in them. I have different levels of interest. Some it might be, I'm interested in meeting you now. I'm not necessarily interested in working with you now, maybe down the road, but I think it's worth a meeting, right? So I think you can't make people want to represent you. So don't have bad karma. I mean, there are people actors that I can't get an agent. I can't get an agent. And then they go to a seminar and, it's like, I really think I deserve an agent. I've been able to get all of this work on my own. So that's why I should have an agent. And that's like, why would I want to be your agent? You already have, you're like holding this what is that, cross to bear, or you have such a big chip on your shoulder that it's really unpleasant, right?
Mhm.
So you have to have
Yeah.
an attitude of we really like people who aren't needy, aren't desperate, aren't
Mhm.
needy, aren't entitled, aren't like, I deserve. No, you would like. I think I'm ready. I I hope to find someone who is really enthusiastic about my talent and what I have to offer, and then we can work together to get it to bigger horizons. It's just, I think the approach and the attitude is really important.
Yeah. Like what can I bring to the table to help the other person rather than
Yay!
for me?
Absolutely, absolutely. Can I put that on a pillow? That's like perfect.
Excellent. Well, for the final little section here, and just out of all the things that you've kind of seen in the industry, if you're thinking of an actor who seems to be like they're feeling like they're stuck in a career plateau, doing the same work over and over again, but what would you say are like one or two things that you've seen that could be like most helpful in moving an actor's career forward?
Sure. Well, I think, there's all different kinds of plateaus. There's actually the professional plateau where you're doing co-stars, 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 but you really want to do, you really want to break into that uh, um, guest star, or you don't want to do two lines, you want to do a scene and that kind of thing. And then there's the internal plateau, like, feeling uninspired, or, I've gone to so many auditions, I'm getting so close, but I'm not booking anything. And I just like, oh boy, I'm really starting to doubt this whole thing. I think what you need then is you need to think totally out of the box and go and do something else. Maybe leave it for a while, maybe go and volunteer someplace else or work in another area of the industry, or if you're just that fed up with the with show business, go and do something else for a little while, just to kind of clean your palate,
Yeah.
or take a trip, take a vacation, or go to a class. Go take a class that has that, like, oh my goodness, I've never done clown work. I'd like to take a clown workshop. Something that's like totally out of the box, that isn't necessarily something that you need to have in your arsenal to get more jobs, but something that will creatively mix things up. Go to an improv class. Go to, something that might even scare you a little bit, or oh my god, I would never even think of doing that. And like, who cares, just do it.
Yeah.
uh, and see if you can just sort of like, I don't know, it's like do a rinse. And as far as like the plateau of the industry, sometimes that's as good as it gets. And it's like, be glad for the work that you're getting.
Hmm.
Maybe, I mean, obviously we're all ambitious and we want to move. I know a lot of people who've been doing co-stars, and they want to do guest stars, and they want to do series regulars. And then I say to them, well, but why? I mean, why would people cast you? They've got celebrities. They've got people who are already doing that. It's really, the jump that you want to make is very difficult.
Hmm.
And you might not be ready for that. Just keep doing what you're doing and build your opportunities, and go and do an independent film and hope that that gets in the festivals and that you make a name for yourself.
Yeah. I think, I mean, it's a really good thing to think about, because I think that a lot of people get to a plateau because they keep doing the same thing over and over again. And your suggestion of, like, trying something outlandish or doing something totally different or meet new people, it's like the definition of insanity, where you keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. I mean, for me, I was sort of at a plateau with my own business, and I took off a couple of months, kind of like clear my head. And when I came back, I figured out things in a totally different, a different mindset. Uh,
Right. I mean, it's very hard. It's very hard uh, to see things when you're very closed off. When you're in a rut,
mhm.
it's very difficult to see out of the rut.
Yeah.
So sometimes I think you need to take yourself out of the rut by doing something, by doing some kind of activity, or take a workshop, or get your focus somewhere else, and then you can have a different perspective when
Yeah.
you come back to it.
It's 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 a mixture of, like, the things that you do and also the people that you know. And a lot of people, in my opinion, forget the fact that they can go out and create relationships whenever they want. I mean, for instance, I met, I don't know if you ever heard of Ramit Sethi. He's a best-selling author of a book. It's related to, like, business stuff, but he's kind of like famous in the business and
Mhm.
finance sphere. And I had joined his mailing list and just decided to respond to one of his emails at one point, and somehow he actually responded to me. And then, like, after a couple of months, occasional little emails, I actually got the chance to meet him in person, and now he's like a network, who could potentially give an opportunity at some point. And a lot of people don't think about that you can go out and create relationships with maybe like up and coming filmmakers or anybody in the industry. If they're open to chatting with you, it just can all start with like a coffee thing. And then a year or two from now, it could turn into like a big opportunity for you, because it's like, hey, I know this person. Let me bring them in for an audition.
That's
And
right. You have to be open, and kind of really sort of like listen to the messages, and never take any kind of connection for granted. I mean, we used to always tell our actors, always bring your photo and resume with you, because you never know who you're going to bump into. I mean, you could be sitting in a coffee shop and Steven Spielberg could be in the next table. You never know. I mean, that could happen. These days, no one really carries all those big photos and resumes. You have a business card, you have a website, and that's all your information. And you start a conversation, you trade business cards, and that's fine. But I mean, that's a whole other thing. People really need to have an internet presence, but we didn't really talk about that too much.
yeah, but
But
that's cover.
yeah, I mean, you never know where your connections will take you. This conversation that we're having, who knows? Maybe we'll come up with a business idea together, a year from now. You just never know. So it's that's very stimulating and that's exciting. And I think that's definitely very much what this current climate is all about. People connecting and formulating connections for business.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun. A lot of people think of networking. It's like, oh, I have to go and, like, introduce myself and then try to like sell myself as an actor. But really, it's more like connecting,
More
conversing.
like connecting, having a conversation, talking about things that interest you. I mean, that's what when we have an interview with an actor, we really don't want them to like uh, um, recite their resume. We want to find out a little bit about them. What makes them tick? What are they interested? Where do they see themselves in the business? So yeah, it's more personal.
Is there anything else that you'd like to finish up by saying?
Oh gosh, this has been just so much fun, and
I
I
know.
we covered so many bases, right? I do think it's a great listen. Working with creative people is a lot of fun, and taking that creativity and making it into a business and marketing, that's also fun. But in the end, I mean, what the actors do is really incredible. It's like magic, for someone to take words and off a page and create a living thing, whether it's for film, TV, or theater. I think I think it is like magic. So it's really fun, and for the actors, I think I mentioned it earlier, but stay positive and be resilient.
Yeah.
And also if you find that at some point that it's just not fulfilling you and it's too hard and you're just uh, there's other things to do. I mean, for me, I became an agent and it was the best thing ever. The best thing ever for me not to continue trying to be a working actor. And when I think about that, I really, I'm not about to tell the acting population don't be an actor, but I am an example of someone who was able to find another area in the business that I'm much more suited for. I'm very fulfilled, and I'm still in the business. And I can contribute so much more from what I'm doing. So it was really a good choice. Uh, anyway, that's what I got. That's what I got for you.
That's actually, I, uh, I want to thank you on behalf of everyone that's listening to this. It was really, really nice chatting with you. And I definitely look forward to reading the rest of this book. I'm getting through it, taking notes. I've learned so many things. And I really think that anybody who, anyone who's considering acting or who's been in it for a long time should definitely look at this. I mean, I know that there's a lot of information in books and like people can read and be like, oh, it's like it might be boring because it's about business and stuff. But, at the very least, get it and skim it and like underline some things and then come back and read those sections in more detail. And then maybe eventually you read the entire thing. But
I mean, the
so,
book is good also, if I may say so, because it has a lot of stories. It
yeah.
has a lot of like stories about actors, and so you have real life instances, and people can relate to that. It's not just what you should do, but there's examples that have to do with specific actors. I don't mention their names, but
No, no, it is fun though. I do enjoy reading the stories because, each of them, it's just like you're reading it and some of them are like, wow, I never thought that this could happen to this person, like based on how it's set up. And it's like, and you realize that a lot of it is based on the networking and all the different, there's so many different factors at play. So it's cool. But
great.
thank you so much.
You're welcome, Martin. It was an absolute pleasure. Good luck to you.
All right, thanks.